For the last hour and a half, we heard about what agents can do, what is impossible, and why you should apply disruptive technology to impossible tasks. And I think, that is exactly how we approach the ADM platform. But before we get into that, some logistics on this whole thing. So three of my colleagues, Ashwin, Ramon, and Joe, will join me for the reveal. I'll actually leave the stage, but I'll just tell you the reason that we decided to build these products out and what is the future looking like. But, that's not going to be complete unless we tie it to how we have come about as a company and why do we think that this is the right moment for agentic technologies, architectures to enter into the space of data management. If every single space is going to get disrupted, then, all of the companies that are, represented today here will also start adopting these disruptive technologies. So it's not very surprising that, the participation that we are seeing includes all of these amazing brands and companies and enterprises. Very, very thankful that, all of you found the time to come and, hopefully this will be worth your while. I also wanted to, before we went further, I wanted to kind of, put something for everybody to think about. That all of these companies put together, they are worth about $1 trillion. And what it essentially shows that, there's going to be, and pretty much everyone that I showed on the previous list is a customer or a partner, which essentially means that data is going to drive large parts of the economy. It is very, very clear that the data haves will have it and the data have-nots will not have it. It's a very simple thing to understand. And therefore, data management becomes even more important. If you remember what George said towards the end of the presentation, that, high quality AI is or has to be grounded in high quality of data. And unless that's put together, it's very hard for something to work out in terms of high quality AI. I also want to, just acknowledge for a second and a few seconds, the number of offices that are looking at this whole stream live. And, I also want to express gratitude to all the employees who got us here. This is our 7th year in existence. We are 6 years old now in the 7th year. And I'm so glad that, we have offices, employees, and people working around the clock, around, different offices in the world. So congratulations to everyone, Acceldata employees, great job. And let's look at, the sponsors for this event. Yet another logistical topic. There are some booths placed right over here at the mezzanine level. Whenever you're walking up for lunch or coffee or any refreshments, please do stop by. They're great partners, great companies, and I'm having a lot of fun working with all of these companies. So, what are we talking about in this session? It is needless to point today that the enterprise data and AI stack is getting more complex. All of you are managing data systems. It is not a surprise. It is just increasing in complexity exponentially. When we first started the company in 2018, we had an inside line and we figured out in 2016, 2017 that the volume of data was going up. But I wasn't prepared for the volume of data going up at this rate. One of my colleagues and I were meeting with a hedge fund, and that person told us that, data is now growing at 173%. I was prepared to take 40%, 50%, 60% as an answer, but I had no clue that it was growing this fast. And why is it happening? So if you go back to circa 2012 or 13, this is how the stack used to look like. Cloud migration started pretty quickly, and a lot of data started finding its way into the cloud. The number of technologies that were included in the enterprise just grew exponentially all of a sudden. And in the next 5 to 10 years, we expect that, the AI data stack will be even more complex. Now, if you put this together, this is the kind of technology landscape that people have to manage today. And, no surprise that data is finding its way in different parts of these technologies, these use case specific purpose built databases. And everybody is running helter skelter, managing migration, managing reconciliation, movement of data from different kinds of user centric applications into analytical applications, which eventually are then used and repurposed for machine learning, AI, and everything else. I don't suspect that this will get any simple, which means that, people will have to get better at managing the data that exists in all of these different verticals, different locations. Whether your gravity is 70% on-premise and 30% cloud, or whether it's vice versa, it doesn't really matter because you'll still have to manage that data really, really well. That is the goal of the company. We ask this question oftentimes in almost all hands internal. We say, okay, why do we exist? And we exist because data is complex. And we are here to solve that problem. Now, this almost appeared like an impossible problem, even for us. The core hypothesis for us when we started was that we are essentially going to synthesize signals across the infrastructure layer, the data layer, and the usage layer. And it seemed almost improbable, I would say, until about a year or 18 months ago, that we would be able to derive meaningful signals out of that. But now we are able to, and you will see in the demo that, the kind of insights that we are able to derive because of the signals that we've collected from all of these different layers are now finally coming together. The metadata is extremely valuable. The operational data is extremely valuable. We ran a survey coming into Autonomous. We wanted to do a dipstick check and find out, okay, what's really going on? Are we on the right track? Is our hypothesis accurate, correct, not correct? And so we did a revenue range sort of cohort, and we said 82% of the companies that we surveyed and the data leaders who participated in our surveys were in companies which are over $1 billion in revenue, which essentially meant that they have large data teams and they are really concerned about how much time and energy they're putting in their data organizations. And it's not a surprise. 50% of these companies had over 250 people working in the data organization. It's awesome because, if you have 250 people and if you, kind of augment them with the agents that we are going to talk about now, you can actually get work done for like 5,000 people. And we'll come to that in just a second. But this is kind of the size that you're looking at. It's anywhere between 50 and 250, which means that there's active backlog today, which is not getting addressed. And that active backlog needs to be cleared very, very rapidly for you to move into the next era. And that's where we are leading into. 62% of the leaders said that, data governance tools did not keep up pace. And obviously, because they were built for the consumption generation, which is, all the BI analytics and the final data warehouses were getting governed. But, all the systems all the way back to the left where data was actually getting produced was not getting governed. And so this is not a surprise for us. We have seen this, time and time again. We've been saying this for the last, 3 to 4 years, that data governance needs to get a lot more operational. It has to be, in sync with how data is changing, moving, and how it is getting consumed. Another insight that we found out was that 58% reported data quality issues, which means that so much of effort being put in, 250 people being put to work. I'm sure that there are additional augmented folks who are coming into the organization, part-time consultants and contract workers, and so much of, heartburn, and yet you're not getting the kind of data that you actually expect for your end data consumers to get. And this is a problem. And this problem becomes much, much bigger if you start thinking that now this data has to make its way into models. Unlike change and rollbacks that you can do very easily in the case of traditional systems, workflow-based systems, it's very hard to roll back models. You'll have to retrain it or, redo the fine-tuning process at the least. And so this is going to be a big problem. This is not a surprise. 75% of the data leaders that we surveyed, they want to, invest in generative AI. And if you talk today to, I found Cassie's comment extremely funny that if it's on PowerPoint, then it's, AI. And if it's in Python, then it's machine learning. So if you go to, let's say, traditional financial institutions and companies, they have deployed over 1,600, 1,800 models, which are live in production, written in Python, and they're being run. The only difference is that they were instructed to do what they're doing today. They weren't actually inducing or imputing what they had to do, which is because they were the more classical models. But we expect that, this is going to improve and change. And obviously, like all other functions in the world, everybody is trying to also make data management, a lot more efficient. Again, not another surprise. 73% of the people want automated detection and remediation. We've been firing alerts from, all the way from Hadoop ecosystem to Snowflake to Databricks. And the biggest complaint that we get is that, yes, you've told me the alert. What are you going to do about it? I don't need so many alerts. Just give me a summarization of what is going wrong. So it's the same problems. Everybody wants, automation because probably they have interesting things to do with their time. I wish, they were spending more time on alerts, but, that's not the intent. you will see that there will be a lot of compression of time and a lot of active backlog will just disappear. Only 13%. Now, while the intent is that 73% people want automation, only 13% have access to, even at a very basic level. And this was the biggest surprise. We did not expect that the automation in data pipelines, data processing across data lakes and data warehouses would be so low. So this is a surprise number for me. So what do we do about this situation? How do we fix it? And that's where this kind of brings us to, the schematic. There are different constituents. You have users, you have functions, you have infrastructure, and then you have outcomes. And if you think of that in a way, the producers and the generators of data, they are at different places. Data is getting generated at all over, the enterprise. It's getting generated in applications, user-centric, which are, directly doing some business function, but it's also coming from other places, which is third-party data sources, inclusion of, additional click streams, for example, if you're a marketing company. Now, when you bring all of that data together, or you have third-party vendors who you're buying data from, when you're putting all of that together, it's very hard to bring all of that together, to harmonize it, and then to produce and make it effective for end consumption usage. And so therefore, a lot of these traditional practices have come about where you have data analysts who are doing a certain thing, data engineers who are harmonizing that data. But then there's another function, which is data governance. And then you have the IT infrastructure, which is responsible for rolling out all of these functions. But there's not a single playbook by which all of these 4 different groups are playing today. But I think what is going to happen because of, the capabilities of generative AI, that there's going to be a massive convergence of these personas, of these functions, and of these technologies. In the next 12 to 18 months, we expect that multiple tools will see space and all of that is going to come together. And the reason for that is what George was elaborating earlier, that it is about the context. And the more context that you have together at one place, the more workflows you can, uncover. One of the things that, you will see in the demo is that, and this is another revelation as a former engineer who had so much focus on, just building the workflows right, making sure that the first-time user and the returning user, they can be served very well, and they could accomplish the job that they were coming to do. That was a rigid, fixed workflow. I believe that, and which is also something that gave rise to different systems. I believe that the age of workflows is over. I think what is going to happen is that people will begin their own workflows. Of course, there's like a lot of governance and security concerns around how this new world will play out. But the number of things that you can do once you have the context available with you is just remarkable. And we'll see that in the demo. Everybody is talking and enamored about, unstructured data. But I would highly, highly recommend that, we pay attention for like a couple of minutes on this slide. Is Arvind Srinivas, the founder and CEO of Perplexity. And he's talking about the importance of, high quality data. I think this is something that is really interesting. The way to think about unstructured versus structured data is that unstructured data gives you the context. A PRD tells you what is the intent, how to go capture the market, but it doesn't tell you what the product is. If you want to, invest in a company, the first thing that you're looking at is the balance sheet. You're trying to figure out how much money is this company making, and that has to be accurate. So the unstructured data can tell you what are the different product lines that this company is developing, what are the drug lines that these companies are working, how many of these are under test, how many expect to be approved in the next 12 months. That's great commentary. But the best way to understand something in a concise form, which is mathematically proven and scientifically accurate, is by facts. And if you think about all the companies which are here, it's financial institutions, data providers, banks, pharma companies, your spend on marketing or spend on advertising, your revenue, ARR, any of those numbers or metrics, they have to be accurate. And therefore, the facts still matter. And because there's going to be a compression of work in terms of making it more efficient, agents are going to come into the enterprise at scale. Before those agents are fine-tuned or working off fine-tuned or pre-trained models, the facts which go into these models, they have to be accurate. And so this is a time where you actually use this statement internally and externally, which is that if you send garbage in, you're going to get disasters out. And I think that is the reason that, it is going to be extremely important for the next 5-10 years to keep highly accurate, reliable data. We'll see, how we are helping in that journey. Agents are definitely, a great answer for this. Ashwin will very soon start talking about all of this in a lot more detail. But these are cognitive architectures. The last thought I want to leave and hand it over to Ashwin is that, cognitive architectures are going to be different than just system architectures. These architectures have the capability of thinking, reasoning, planning. It's almost like a human thinking about how do I go about my day? And it is happening. And, during the demo, you will see all of that, with Ramon and Joe a little later.